All right, guys, Brian Walsh here again, Entrepreneur.co. Today we're sitting with Dr. Weir Singer. It's Rohan. English accent, you might get a fright when you realise that. But obviously, origin, I'm just interested by the name.
Yeah, Dr. Rohan Weerasinghe is a bit of a mouthful, I know. It's in Sri Lanka, it's like Smith. So my father's Sri Lankan, my mother's English, so I come from a mixed background.
Right. So we know Sri Lanka because of the cricket, so I'm sure
absolutely
you have some fun when that happens at the household as well. But what's interesting, Rohan, is what you're really talking about in South Africa at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's something that's been addressed by many people, so it'll be interesting to see in the context. But you were actually an engineer. I mean, your doctor is a doctor in engineering.
Civil engineering. My PhD was in geotechnical engineering. I became one of about 4 or 5 people in the world that specialised in a very specific type of underground support.
Which means earning capacity wasn't that bad, obviously, with that places.
Well, you know, it's limited by time. So with any career, for anyone watching this, I'm sure they'll appreciate it. You can be highly paid in a job, but there's only 24 hours a day. And if you lose the ability to do that, which is what I saw in my father. I mean, I'm 47 now. My father died when he was 46. So I've outlived my father in terms of the lifespan. And he was educated, but paralysed down one side through strokes, and I saw him deteriorate over the years. And I think that drove into my heart a real realisation that you can't just rely on your ability to do a job. You have to have something beyond you that continues to bring an income.
So I mean, the context of when you went, I mean, this is interesting from a personal perspective. So at some stage you realised, even though you were highly qualified, earning money was okay, but it wasn't going to give you what you really wanted. And that's when you started to explore, you know, which is now the stuff.
You're going to find this interesting. I started exploring it actually when I was 18, reading personal development, and I didn't really know why I was doing it. I just wanted to study the world, mind mapping, personal growth, communication. Then when I was in my job, as I finished my PhD, I started to read more books around wealth development, and there I am finishing a PhD, embarking on a career into civil engineering, being told I'd be a lead in my field. But at the same time, reading these books about wealth creation, and then of course things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad comes out, and very quickly I realised actually I don't want to just be reliant on this one income. So even though I was pursuing a career, I was already starting some side businesses to see if I could get something to work for. I just hadn't found a vehicle that was tangible, that would continue to make income even when I wasn't there. And that's what I was looking for. Because having seen my father lose his ability to work, I realised even with the great knowledge in my head, 9 years of a PhD, what if I suddenly lose the ability to communicate? Not that I want to wish that upon myself, but it was about long-term security. Not about fast cars and you know, big houses. Security.
No, and it should never be really. I mean, tend to, you know, people that are really producing results. I mean, so you were looking for a vehicle. I mean, your entrepreneurial mind was going. It wasn't about some major thing you wanted to do. It was about creating security, that sense of freedom, and it always comes from experiences like, especially
pain, and also. In the 80s and 90s in the UK, there was a lot of redundancy. So when I started my career and I was told if you aspire and work hard, you'll get to this level. Well, as I was in the job, the people at this level started to get made redundant and downsized. And I saw people with new houses and families, in tears, grown men. And I just thought, you know, I'm not prepared to be answerable to somebody else. I know I've got the ability to do it. I just needed a vehicle. That's what I needed.
So now let's tell everyone what you do, because of course I'm just conscious of the fact that we're getting excited about the story. What is it? What's the core of what you do and what you teach that's so brilliant, that's affecting people's lives?
So real estate became the vehicle. I looked at lots of different businesses, internet-based businesses, and even sort of franchise, multi-level marketing type business, which were all great businesses, but I wanted something that I could walk away from if I needed to, and I figured everybody needs a house over there, a roof over their heads. So my business partner was totally uneducated. Here's the twist in the tale. This guy comes from Calcutta. He's got an Indian takeaway in Oxfordshire. He says to me, we should go look at properties. And I was like, yeah, I've been looking at properties. And let's do one together. So we do one together. And I'm thinking conventionally, save up your money, buy a property, and then do another one. And maybe over 10 years, we'll buy 5 or 10 properties. And he finds this flyer for a type Rich Dad education program. And I was like, what's this? We don't need this. I've got a PhD. I'm a doctor. He said, but I've got no education. Let's just go. And it was his lack of education and willingness to receive information which actually moved him forward. And you know, for those of you that are listening that are professionals or working in a career or consider yourselves to be quite high up the ladder, my biggest challenge when I'm teaching audiences now are the doctors, the lawyers, the high professionals, because they're like, you know, I'm doing okay, but okay is not good enough anymore. And it was him that dragged me to a free event, which was similar to the National Achievers Congress, which is where we are now, which then got me to a 3-day seminar. And we went from one property which we had together to 40 in 1 year, and we had no money. So it was creative financing, it was passive income generation, it was buying and selling, and we did it in a very short space of time.
So obviously having proved that and obviously seen the benefits, and when was this? This was
2002.
Right, so this was pre the recession as well.
It was, It was when everything looked good. I mean, interest rates were higher than they are now for us, but everything looked... The focus was capital growth.
Yeah.
But what we were taught was, what happens if the capital growth changes? And the whole focus of the weekend we were being taught, which is what I teach people now, and thankfully here in South Africa, they wanted to come here for years, is what I'll be teaching here in September, is passive income as well as cash, and long-term equity comes last. So people always think, well, I'll hold and pray and maybe it'll go up. And we say, hold, make income, add value, and it'll go up anyway. Yeah. So yeah, we focused in the first 2 or 3 years on buying properties that generate passive income. Yeah. Even though the market was growing strong, it was strong at the time.
Yeah, well, I think Kiyosaki was the guy that always said an asset is something that makes money, not something.
Exactly, puts it in your pocket every single month. He's been an inspiration to me. I'm very privileged to work closely with their organisation as well.
And so you've developed, obviously now through your own experience, a particular model in terms of helping people do this. Is this a generic model to invest in property for this purpose?
No, that's a good question. I mean, the first thing to be aware of for people watching this is that real estate's a big market, and I think if you're watching this right now and you've got money, which there will be people watching who've got money, entrepreneurs, the easiest thing to do is to be what we call an armchair investor. There's companies out there that will say, here's a nice brochure, buy this property, it's new development's going to be built in 6 months' time, capital growth, but there's no calculations on cash flow, there's no assessment on the long-term viability of it as a business, not just as a capital growth model. So you have to be wary of that. So what I teach is tied into the Tigrant model, which is Tigrant Rich Dad education, and that's essentially teaching people how to raise money for investments, because not everyone has got cash to start with, we didn't have, how to evaluate a deal from the bottom up, so looking at the cash flow, does it cash flow every single month, are you having to put money into the deal? If you are, don't do the deal. If you're not, you can take money from it, do the deal. Can you recycle the money? So here I was talking on the stage about buying a property below market value, adding value to it, taking an income from it, going back to the bank, which is more difficult to do here, to be fair, in South Africa, and recycling it and pulling the money back out by refinancing. So that's just, we also talk about sourcing, distressed property, doing options contracts where you don't have to own the property, looking at things like, for example, tax and structuring a business for tax, and wrapping it all into a model that's applicable anywhere in the world. So going back to your question, what I teach is a system, and I say to people, you can drive the system. You can drive a Toyota Prius here in South Africa, you can also drive it in Italy. It just means you have to drive a slightly different way, but you've got the system. Once you've got a system, you adapt it into your market. So when I teach in a country, we look at the market, but I also show them other markets as well. You've got a system, you can do it anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I mean, I was listening to some of the tweets actually that we were talking about. Okay. As you were talking, and people were saying, but you're talking about the UK. It's a classic South African mentality sometimes. Right, You see the world out there and we're in, but it's a small little world. Yeah. And I happen to know a number of American friends of mine through different circles who are coming in and starting to invest in property in South Africa. And, so it's not about where you invest in the exact market you're in. It's very much about understanding the system and getting something of value that you can translate into.
And I think that's the point I wanted to get across here, is that I use a teaching called strategy area property. So once you know what your strategy is, if you said to me, I want to generate cash of say 200,000 Rand in the next year, and I don't want it passively, then we focus on a cash strategy. Now that is more than achievable here if you buy a property at the right price, add value and sell it on. If you said to me, I want to buy a property that cash flows 20,000 Rand a month passively, and I want to do an interest-only mortgage and refinance it, that's very difficult to do here. So once you know the systems that are there, you look at your market and you say, right, here's my strategies, I want to do 3 strategies. One of them works in the country I'm in, I'm going to have to look somewhere else. And whether it's America or the UK, good investors realise they look at return on investment. If I have to go over there and spend 2 or 3 weeks or a weekend or spend 5 days setting up a team and I come back to this country, now I do my buying and selling in South Africa, but my passive income is in the UK or America. Yeah. So you're absolutely right, but the investors has to realise that if it doesn't work in a market, you can't keep trying to make it work. You have to find another area. Yeah. So diversify.
Yeah, but you're helping people see that it's about the end goal, isn't it? Like you say,
always,
it's there's certain set rules. Don't put money in and sort of keep it as a dead asset. But the point is that if you're looking for a quicker, harder return, then there's other markets that are better to put your money in.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about South Africa is I showed a curve where the market seems to be slowing at the moment when I talk about house price to salary ratios. There's lots of subtle stuff I go into. But once you can objectively look at a market, you go, you know, just in this part of town, we can do this, but it won't work anywhere else. So I then go, strategy area, that part of town. Like, you go to Oxford, you can't really get high income generating properties unless you leave more money in them. Whereas I can take you 2 hours away in the United Kingdom, where you can buy a property for half the price that will produce maybe 2 or 3 times the income. So even in a country, you've got to do strategy area property. But you have to get out of this whole thing about, I only want to buy near where I live. I teach business, and the concept of a business is, if it's run properly, you can systemize it like a franchise, and you can still have an income coming from over here while you're sleeping over here. And that's what we'll have to teach people.
I mean, it's a context of freedom. So what is Rohan going to do with his freedom? I mean, this is something you've obviously materialized. I mean, you're not even practicing as an engineer anymore, obviously.
I haven't been since 2003, actually.
So what drives you now? What's the real passion?
Good question. Well, part of being, I mean, hopefully you can get that from my nature. I've always had, my mum told me from a young age I was always wanting to infectiously teach people different things. So I started teaching in schools and colleges whilst I was doing my PhD on how to study, the mindset of studying. And my main focus now is inspiring people to make changes. And as corny as that may sound, and people sometimes go, but if you're so successful, why are you here? I ask every audience, as I did here in South Africa, 4,000 people, how many of you are financially free would love to take the time to teach other people to do the same thing? And you saw it, like 85% of people said, yeah, well, that's why I do what I do. My wife, my fiancée, I'm not married to her yet, but she'll love me for saying that. So my fiancée and my daughter, they travel with me a lot of the time. We spend probably 40-50% of the year just travelling. So my daughter's now 4.5. She's been to multiple countries, and we're not tied to a place. For your entrepreneurs watching this, if you guys run businesses based in South Africa, the beautiful thing is that if you have an income-generating property portfolio, you can go anywhere. So you say, you know what, I want to step away from that for a while. I don't have to be involved with it. I travel. So I write books. I'm the author of a book called Turning Point, which is a mindset book. I've got another book on the way at the moment. And I run personal development seminars back in the United Kingdom. And my other passion is working really closely with Tiger and Rich Dad, who are the number one in what they do, just teaching properties. It's just the foundation for everything. We're sitting in a building, somebody owns this, they're making an income on it, you know. It's a fantastic.
I think it's something. It's such an interesting debate. And just to address the one other issue, because you brought it up. So why doesn't he do it for free if he's financially free? Because it's a context of value. I mean, I'm sorry to drag into this one, but I know there's like the Australian entrepreneurs out there. Oh, come to South Africa, help us do it for free. But the truth is, I mean, I know I work with some of the best speakers in the world. You know, you don't value what you don't pay for.
No, and I'll be honest with you and tell you that, you know, some of the people I know close to me, friends, have said, oh, you can get me into the trainings back home, you're the lead trainer in the UK. I say, go pay for it. And they say, well, no. But I know if they pay for it, they'll value it. If they've paid for it, then I'll give them some of my time. And the things that we get for free, we don't value. No, even the people around us that we care about, we tend to take for granted. So every business has a cost. If you're entrepreneurs watching this, you'll know this. And I treat it like this. Every client that comes to our door is a customer. As long as we give them massive value, they'll keep coming back. And the Tiger model and the Rich Dad model has been running for a long time. You know, we're talking about decades now. And I think when you add value to an audience and they make money from it, they'll come back. And for anyone watching this, forget property. Any business is the same. Add value. Never be afraid to charge for that value, and as long as you give more than people expect, they'll keep coming back, and that's what I believe we do.
Yeah, I think it's very relevant now. So, Rohan, we're going to see you more often in South Africa?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to coming back in September. Within the organisation, there's a lot of South Africans that become successful through property, so I'm bringing some of those back with me as well. We will be teaching how to look at the South African market, but I need to give the investors here a bigger picture so they can, if they want to evaluate, we'll look at UK properties, they can bring live deals with them and stuff like that. It's a pretty full-on 3 days. And we do everything from sourcing properties to number crunching to evaluating deals to the taxes side of things as well. And I'll bring a few specialists with me that actually help people for international properties.
Well, I think it's a privilege to have you here. I always say it's wonderful, you know, when you get an entrepreneur who's teaching what they've learned as opposed to teaching, you know, theories that they've learned before.
Absolutely.
You know, you did this all first before you became the teacher.
I was a product of the system, which is even better. I think.
So I mean, it's going to be an incredible opportunity.
Well, thanks for the interview. Hopefully it's helped.
We will.
Thanks
Thanks very much, Rohan.
Thank you.